2. Introduction. Energy can be defined as the capacity to do work. All biological activities need consumption of energy, which ultimately derives from the sun. The solar energy is converted into chemical energy by the process of photosynthesis, which is stored in plant tissues and then transformed into mechanical and heat energy during metabolic activities. In the biological world, the energy flows from the sun to plants and then to all heterotrophic organisms, such as microorganisms, animals, and human. Figure 1. In the biological world, the energy flows from the sun to plants and then to all heterotrophic organisms, such as microorganisms, animals, and human. Figure 1. Sun. Figure point 1. Energy flow from sun to plant and then to all heterotrophic organisms. Mechanical energy is present in two forms, kinetic energy and potential energy. Kinetic energy can be defined as the energy possessed by the body by virtue of its motion. It is measured by the amount of work done in bringing the body at rest. The potential energy is the stored energy which becomes useful after conversion into the kinetic energy. All organisms require a source of potential energy, which is found in the chemical energy of food. The oxidation of food releases energy which is used to do work. Thus, chemical energy is converted into mechanical energy. Food is the means to transfer of both matter and energy in the living world. The unit of measurement of energy is joule. All forms of energy can be completely converted into heat energy. Heat is measured in calories. 1 calorie is equal to the heat energy required to raise the temperature of 1 gram of water from 14.5 degrees Celsius to 15.5 degrees Celsius, and 1 calorie is equal to 4.2 joules. 3. Ecological energetics. Ecological energetics consists of energy transformation which occurs within the ecosystems. Ecological energetic consists of I. The amount of energy reaching to an ecosystem per unit of area per unit of time. E. The quantity of energy trapped by green plants which they converted into chemical energy photosynthesis. E. The quantity and energy flow from producers to organisms of different trophic levels. Consumers over a period of time in given area. The energy used by all green plants derived from solar radiations. Only a small fraction of energy reaches to Earth's surface, 1 to 5%, is used by green plants for photosynthesis and rest is absorbed as heat by ground vegetation or water. In fact, only about 0.02% of the sunlight reaching the atmosphere is used in the process of photosynthesis. 4. Thermodynamics principle. Energy transformation in ecosystems can also be explained in relation to the laws of thermodynamics, which are usefully applied to closed systems. 4. 4.1. First law of thermodynamics, law of conservation of energy. It states that in a closed system, energy can neither be created nor destroyed but can only be transferred from one form into another. When fuel is burned to drive a car, the potential energy and chemical bond of fuel is converted into mechanical energy to drive the car. The key point is, the total amount of energy consumed and compare with the total amount of energy produced would always be equal. Such type of energy conservation is also found in biological system. In ecological systems, solar energy is converted into chemical energy stored in food materials which is ultimately converted into mechanical and heat energy. Thus, in ecological systems, the energy is neither created nor destroyed but is converted from one form into another. Thus, when wood is burned, the potential energy present in the molecules of wood equals the kinetic energy released, and heat is evolved to the surroundings. This is an exothermic reaction. In an endothermic reaction, energy from the surrounding may be paid into a reaction. For example, in photosynthesis, the molecules of the product store more energy than the reactants. The extra energy is acquired from the sunlight, but even then there is no gain or loss in total energy. 4.2. Second law of thermodynamics. The second law of thermodynamics states that processes involving energy transformation will not occur spontaneously unless there is degradation of energy from a non-random to a random form. In other words, the disorder entropy in the universe is constantly increasing and that during energy conservation, an energy transformation will spontaneously occur unless there is degradation of energy from a concentrated form into a dispersed form. For example, in man-made machines, closed systems, heat is the simplest and most recognizable medium of energy transfer. The outcome of this law is very significant in biological system. But in biological systems, energy transfer is not a useful medium, as the living systems are fundamentally isothermal and there is no significant variation in temperature between different cells in the organism or between various cells in a tissue of the organism. At each level of conservation, some of the energy is lost as heat. Therefore, the more conservation taking place between the capture of light energy by plants and the trophic level being considered, the less the energy is available to that level. The efficiency of the transfer of 5. Energy along food chain from one trophic level to another is generally less than 10% as the 90% of energy is lost as heat. The study of energy flow is important in determining limits to food supply and the production of all biological resources. The capture of light energy and its conversion into stored chemical energy by autotrophic organisms provide ecosystems with their primary energy source. The total amount of energy converted into organic matter as the gross primary production varies between different systems. The energy stored in the food material is made available through cell respiration. Chemical energy is released by burning the organic compound with oxygen using enzyme-mediated reactions within cells. It produces carbon dioxide and water as waste products. Energy flow is the movement of energy through a system from an external source through a series of organisms and back to the environment. At each trophic level within the system, only the small fraction of the available energy is used for the production of new tissue. Most is used for respiration and body maintenance. 5. Lindemann's trophic dynamic concept. According to Lindemann 1942, the amount of energy at trophic level is determined by the net primary production NPP and the efficiency at which food energy is converted into biomass. The plants use 15 to 70% of assimilated energy for the maintenance which is not available to the consumers. The herbivores and carnivores are comparatively more active as compared to plants which uses more assimilated energy for the maintenance. So, the productivity at each trophic level lies between 5 to 20% that of the level below it. The percentage of energy which is transferred from one trophic level to the next trophic level is called as ecological efficiency. In general, secondary producers utilize 55% to 75% of assimilated energy in maintenance. Temperature and moisture are two components of the habitat, and the type of species determine the maintenance cost. The dry and hot regions require higher maintenance cost, irrespective of the species. For example, the average maintenance cost of few Indian earthworm species was 6.48, 9.96 and 20.54 kilojoules per gram dry tissue per month in the winter, rainy and 6 summer seasons respectively in tropical pastures. The maintenance cost varies seasonally, and higher was found in summer, which was 3 times more as compared to winter. 6. Assimilated energy and respiration energy. When the organism eats the food, the digestion and absorption of the food is referred to as assimilated energy, which is used for maintenance, building the tissues, or it is removed or excreted in unusable metabolic byproducts. The energy which is lost in the form of heat during metabolic needs is called as respiration energy. A smaller fraction of assimilated energy is excreted in the form of organic or nitrogen-containing wastes, ammonia, urea or uric acid produced when the diet is rich in nitrogen. Assimilated energy of the organism is used for the synthesis of new biomass production through growth and reproduction, which may be then consumed by herbivores, carnivores and detritivores. However, organisms are not able to digest and assimilate all food materials like hair, feathers, exoskeleton of insects and cellulose and lignin of plants. These materials are digested by defecation or by regurgitation of pellets of undigested food. Some of these wastes remain relatively unaltered during their passage through an organism, but all these materials are mechanically broken down into fragments by chewing and contractions of the stomach and intestines, which makes them more readily usable by detritus feeders. 7. Ecological efficiency. Ecological efficiency can be defined as the product of efficiencies in which organisms exploit their food resources and convert them into biomass for next higher trophic level. As biological production is almost consumed, the overall exploitation efficiency remains 100%, whereas ecological efficiency is dependent on two factors: the proportion of assimilated energy incorporated in growth, storage and reproduction. The first proportion is called as assimilation efficiency and second is net production efficiency. The product of the assimilation efficiency and net production efficiencies is called as gross production efficiency. It is the proportion of food energy that is transformed into consumer biomass. 7. 8. Energy. Net production efficiency of plants is the ratio of net production to gross production. This index varies between 30% and 85%, depending on habitat and growth form. The rapidly growing plants in temperate zones have high net production efficiencies, 75 to 85%. Similar vegetation types in the tropics exhibit lower net production efficiencies, perhaps 40 to 60% respiration increases relative to photosynthesis at low latitudes. Definition of various energetic efficiencies. The nutritional value of plant foods is determined by the amount of lignin, cellulose and other indigestible materials present in The nutritional value of plant foods is determined by the amount of lignin, cellulose and other indigestible materials present in the plant. The animal food is more easily digested when compared with plant food. Assimilation efficiency can vary in different predatory species from 60% to 90%. The vertebrate prey species can be digested efficiently as compared to insect prey. This is because the insects have larger proportion of indigestible exoskeletons of body than the hair, feathers and scales of the vertebrates. Moreover, the assimilation efficiencies of insectivores can differ in between 70% to 80%, and most of the carnivores have about 90% efficiency. In warm homeothermic warm-blooded animals, energy is needed for maintenance, movement and heat production that otherwise could be utilized for growth and reproduction. The homeothermic animals exhibit low net production efficiency. For example, birds show net production efficiency production, growth and reproduction, assimilation equals assimilation efficiency, assimilation ingestion equals exploitation efficiency. Ingestion of food, prey production equals consumer production. Prey production equals ecological efficiency, exploitation efficiency equals gross production efficiency x. Production ingestion equals gross production efficiency, assimilation efficiency equals net production efficiency x. Less than 1% in small mammals with high reproductive rates exhibit up to 6% of net production efficiency. However, sedentary poikilothermic animals, cold-blooded, of aquatic species can direct up to 75% of their assimilated energy into the growth and reproduction. In domesticated animals, the extreme high value approaches the biochemical efficiency of egg production and tissue growth, between 70 to 80% Ricklefs, 1974. The gross production efficiency, i.e., biomass production efficiency within a trophic level, is the product of assimilation efficiency and net production efficiency. Gross production efficiencies of warm-blooded terrestrial animals rarely go beyond 5%, and those of some birds and large mammals fall below 1%. Gross production efficiencies of insects occur in between 5 to 15%, and those of some aquatic animals go beyond 30%. 8. Models of energy flow in ecosystem. 8.1. Single-channel energy flow model. The principle of food chain and the working of the two laws of thermodynamics can be clarified by means of single-channel energy flow model. All biological activities need energy which they derived from the sun. The energy obtained from the sun is transformed into chemical energy by the process of photosynthesis. This energy is stored in plant tissue and transformed into heat energy during metabolic activities. The solar energy captured by autotrophs never revert back to sun, however, it passes to herbivores, and that which passes to herbivores does not go back to autotrophs but passes to consumers. Thus, in biological system, the energy flows from the sun to plants and then to all heterotrophic organisms. The flow of energy is unidirectional and non-cyclic. Due to unidirectional flow of energy, the entire system would collapse if primary source of energy were cut off. At each tropic level there is progressive decrease in energy as heat in the metabolic reactions, and also some of the energy is utilized at each tropic level. This one-way flow of energy is governed by laws of thermodynamics, which states, energy can neither be created nor be destroyed but may be transformed from one form to another. 9. B. During energy transfer there is degradation of energy from a concentrated form. Mechanical, chemical, etc. to dispersed form, heat. C. Energy transformation is never 100% efficient, it is always accompanied by some loss of energy in the form of heat. Therefore, all biological systems including ecosystems must require energy on a continuous basis. The energy flow diagram, figure 2, depicting 3 trophic levels, box 1, 2 and 3, in a linear food chain. Here the boxes represent the trophic level producers, herbivores and carnivores, and the pipe depicts the energy flow in and out of each trophic level. There is loss of energy represented as pipes at every successive trophic level. There is also a corresponding decline in biomass represented as box. However, it does not specify any correlation between the biomass and energy. The connection between biomass and energy content may vary according to different conditions. For example, 1 gram of algae may be equivalent to several grams of forest leaves, due to the fact that the production rate of algae is higher than the forest leaves. The higher biomass of the organism does not necessarily indicate the higher productivity. Energy flow in the system balance. The energy outflows is required by the first law of thermodynamics, and each energy transfer is accompanied by loss of energy in the form of unavailable heat energy respiration, as stated by second law of thermodynamics. Figure 2. Linear energy flow model in an ecosystem. I total energy input, a total assimilation, L light absorbed by plants, Pg gross primary productivity, Pn net primary productivity, P secondary productivity, Nenergy not used, Nenergy not assimilated by consumer, respiration. 10. The energy flow is significantly reduced at each successive trophic level. Thus, at each transfer of energy from one trophic level to another trophic level, major part of energy is lost in the form of heat or any other form. There is successive reduction in the energy flow whether we consider it in term of total flow, I plus A, or secondary productivity and respiration component. Total of 3000 kcal of light falling upon green plants. 50% is absorbed, 1500 kcal, 1% is converted at first trophic level, 15 kcal, secondary productivity 10 to about 10% at successive consumer level, although efficiency may be up to 20% at the carnivores level. 8.2. Y-shaped or double channel energy flow model. E-shaped model shows a common boundary, light and heat flow as well as import, export and storage of organic matter. Decomposers are placed in separate box to partially separate the grazing and detritus food chains. In terms of energy levels, decomposers are in fact a mixed group. Micro-consumers, bacteria and fungi, and the macro-consumers, animals, differ greatly in size metabolism relations in two models. In Y-shaped energy flow, grazing and detritus food chain are sharply separated. It is more practical than simple linear chain energy model as I. It confirms the basic stratified structure of ecosystem. E. It separates the grazing food chain from detritus food chain, direct consumption of living plants and utilization of dead organic matter respectively, in both time and space. E. Macro-consumer animals and micro-consumers, bacteria and fungi, differ greatly in size metabolism relations. In Y-shaped model figure 3, one arm represents the grazing food chain and the other arm represents detritus food chain. The two arms differ fundamentally in such a way that they can influence primary producers. For example, in Marine Bay, the energy flow through grazing food chain is larger than the energy flow via detritus food chain. Whereas reverse is true for forest food chain, where 90% or more of net primary production is normally utilized in detritus food chain. Thus, in marine ecosystem the grazing food chain is the major pathway of energy flow, whereas in the forest ecosystem, the detritus food chain is more important. In 11. 12. Grazing chain, herbivore feed on living plant, therefore they directly affect the plant population. What they not eat is available, after death, to the decomposer. As a result, decomposers are not able to directly influence the rate of supply of their food. Figure 3. Y-shaped energy flow model showing linkage between grazing and detritus food chain. Figure 3. Y-shaped energy flow model showing linkage between grazing and detritus food chain. In heavily grazed grassland, 50% or more of the net production may pass down the grazing pathway, but many aquatic systems like shallow water operated as detritus system. Since all the food is not assimilated by the grazers, some is diverted to the detritus route. So the impact of grazers on the community depends on the rate of removal of living plant and the amount of energy in the food that is assimilated. Marine zooplanktons commonly graze more phytoplanktons than they can assimilate, the excess being egested to the detritus food chain. Thus energy flow along different paths is dependent on the rate of removal of living plant material by herbivores as well as on the rate of assimilation in their bodies. The Y-shaped model further indicates that the two food chains are in fact, under natural conditions, not completely isolated from one another. For example, dead bodies of small animals that were once part of grazing food chain become incorporated in the detritus food chain as do the feces of grazing food animals. The importance of two food chains may differ. Herbivore. Carnivore. Detritivore. Plant S. Predator. Sunlight. In different ecosystem, in some cases, grazing is more important and in others, detritus is more important. 8.3. Universal energy flow model. Universal model is applicable to any living component, whether a plant, animal microorganism, or individual or population or a trophic group. Odom, EP, 1968. It can depict the food chain as already shown in single and Y-shaped energy flow diagram or bioenergetics of an entire ecosystem. It represents the energy partitioning in the individual or species population, showing the living structure or biomass as a box B. Figure 4a. IR presents energy input, which is light in case of autotrophs and food in case of heterotrophs. The usable part of the input is assimilated A, and unusable part is not utilized NU. A large portion of assimilated energy must always be respired R to provide maintenance or existence energy to keep the body functioning and repaired. A part of energy can be used for growth and reproduction P. S is the stored energy, which is used to accept further input of energy. The partitioning of energy between P and R is of vital importance to the individual and species. Large organisms require more maintenance energy than small ones as they have more biomass to maintain. The warm-blooded animals require more energy than the cold-blooded animals. Predators generally must expend a large percentage of assimilated energy in respiration than herbivore to find and overcoming the prey. The species adapted to unstable, recently derived or underpopulated area generally allocate a large portion of their energy to reproduction. The species adapted to stable and more favorable habitats allocate little energy to reproduction. New. GPAI. B. E. A. R. 13. B. Figure 4. Universal energy flow model. II input or ingested energy, Nu no utilized energy, assimilated energy, P production, R respiration, B biomass, G growth, S stored energy, E excreted energy. Odom, 1963. The universal model of energy flow can be used in two ways. It can represent a species population, in which case the appropriate energy inputs and the links with other species would be shown as conventional species-oriented food web diagram, or the model can represent a discrete energy level, in which case the biomass and energy channels represent all or parts of many populations supported by the same energy source. Foxes, for example, usually obtain part of their food by eating plants, fruits, etc., and part by eating herbivores, rabbit, field mice, etc. A single box diagram could be used to represent the whole population of foxes if our objective is to stress intrapopulation energetic. On the other hand, two or more boxes, figure 4b, would be employed if we wish to separate the metabolism of a population into two or more trophic levels in accordance with the proportion of plant and animals consumed. These models depict the basic pattern of energy flow in the ecosystem. In practice, under natural condition, the organisms are interrelated in a way that several food chains become interlocked, and this result into a complex food web. 9. Ecosystem goods and services. Every ecosystem provides large number of goods and services directly or indirectly to all animals, including humans, figure 5 and 6. These services provided by nature are free of cost. 14. 15. Figure 5. Services provided by ecosystem. Ecosystem services can be categorized into four types. 1. Provisioning services. The ecosystem 1. Provisioning services. The ecosystem provides food, fiber, fuel, biochemicals or fuels, water, genetic resources like seeds, etc. and many more. 2. Regulating services. It includes the control of flood, regulation of climate, prevent soil erosion, waste recycling, habitat protection, control of human diseases. 3. Cultural services. The non-material benefits obtained from the ecosystem, including education, recreation, experiencing the nature's beauty, and many more. 4. Supporting services. Ecosystem services that are necessary for the production of all other ecosystem services like biomass production, production of atmospheric oxygen and soil formation, etc. 16. 16. Ecosystem services. Provisioning services. Ability of ecosystem to provide resources. Example: food provisioning, water provisioning, raw materials, genetic resources, ornamental resources, medicinal resources, fiber, fuel. Regulating services. Ability of ecosystem to provide beneficial regulatory processes. Example: natural hazards regulation, purification and detoxification of water, pest and disease regulation, pollination, control of human diseases. Cultural services. Ability of ecosystem to provide non-material benefits. Example: information for research and education, recreation, inspiration for arts, experiencing the nature's beauty, cultural identify and heritage, mental well-being and health. Supporting services. Services necessary for the production of other ecosystem services. Example: life cycle maintenance, biodiversity maintenance and protection, biomass production, production of atmospheric oxygen and soil formation. Figure 6. Summary of services provided by ecosystem. 10. Homeostasis in ecosystem. Ecosystem has characteristics of self-maintenance and self-regulation. It has important application in ecology as humans are continuously disturbing the natural control or attempts to substitute artificial mechanism for natural one. Homeostasis refers to the tendency for a biological system to resist change and to remain in the state of equilibrium. However, the control depends on feedback, either in positive or negative way. The positive feedback is deviation accelerating, while negative feedback is deviation counteracting. Both natural and man-made activities induce the changes in the ecosystem, but regulated feedback mechanism tends to resist the same, thus, homeostasis is maintained. In every ecosystem, there are three basic components: input, internal cycling, and output. Those are influenced by soil and climate. The input of nutrient into the ecosystem depends on the type of biogeochemical cycle. Nutrients with a gaseous cycle, such as carbon and nitrogen, enter the ecosystem via the atmosphere. In contrast, nutrients such as calcium and phosphorus have sedimentary cycles with inputs dependent on the weathering of rocks and minerals. Primary productivity in ecosystems depends on the uptake of essential minerals, inorganic nutrients by plants, and their incorporation into living tissues. Nutrients in organic forms, stored in living tissues, represent a significant proportion of the total nutrient pool in most ecosystems. As these living tissues senescence, the nutrients are returned to the soil or sediments in the form of dead organic matter. Various microbial decomposers transform the organic nutrients into a mineral form, a process called mineralization, and the nutrients are once again available to the plants for uptake and incorporation into new tissues. This process is called internal cycling and is an essential feature of all ecosystems. It represents a recycling of nutrients within the ecosystem. The export of nutrients, i.e., output from the ecosystem, represent a loss that must be offset by inputs if a net decline is not to occur. Export can occur in a variety of ways, depending on the nature of the specific biogeochemical cycling. Carbon is exported to the atmosphere in the form of CO2 via the process of respiration by all living organisms. Likewise, a variety of microbes and plant processes result in the transformation of organic and inorganic nutrients to a gaseous phase that can subsequently be transported from the ecosystem in the atmosphere. The generalized model is shown in the figure. The feedback system is available in internal cycling balances the homeostasis of ecosystem. 11. Control on ecosystem function. There are two theories of the control of ecosystems. The first, called bottom-up control, it states that nutrient supply to the primary producers controls ecosystems function. If the nutrient supply is increased, it results in the increase in production of producers is propagated. 17. 18. Through the food web and all of the other trophic levels will respond to the increased availability of food, energy, and materials will cycle faster. Top-down control. Bottom-up control. Figure 7. Top-down and bottom-up control on ecosystem. The second theory, called top-down control, states that predation and grazing by higher trophic levels on lower trophic levels ultimately controls ecosystem function. For example, increase in number of predators results in low population of herbivores, and that decrease in herbivores will result in turn in more primary producers because fewer of them are being eaten by the grazers. Thus the control of population numbers and overall productivity cascades from the top levels of the food chain down to the bottom trophic levels. 12. Summary. Energy can be defined as the capacity to do work. All biological activities required energy which ultimately derives from the sun. The plants convert solar energy into chemical energy by the process of photosynthesis, which is then transformed into mechanical and heat energy during metabolic activities. In the biological world, the energy flows from the sun to plants and then to all heterotrophic organisms. Energy transformation in ecosystems can also be explained in relation to the laws of thermodynamics, which are usefully applied to closed systems. First law of thermodynamics explains about conservation of energy, which states that energy can neither be created nor destroyed but can only be transferred from one form into another. Whereas, the second law of thermodynamics states that processes involving energy transformation will not occur spontaneously unless there is degradation of energy from a non-random to a random form. When the organism eats the food, the digestion and absorption of the food is referred to as assimilated energy, which is used for maintenance, building the tissues, or it is removed or excreted in unusable metabolic byproducts. Ecological efficiency can be defined as the product of efficiencies in which organisms exploit their food resources and convert them into biomass for next higher trophic level. The nutritional value of animal food is more than plant foods, as plants consist of lignin, cellulose, and other indigestible materials. Assimilation efficiency can vary in different predatory species from 60% to 90%. The vertebrate prey species can be digested efficiently as compared to insect prey. The homeothermic animals exhibit low net production efficiency. However, sedentary poikilothermic animals, cold-blooded, of aquatic species can direct up to 75% of their assimilated energy into the growth and reproduction. The principle of food chain and the working of the two laws of thermodynamics can be clarified by means of single-channel energy flow model. In the energy flow diagram, the boxes represent the trophic level and the pipe depicts the energy flow in and out of each trophic level. There is loss of energy at every successive trophic level. There is also a corresponding decline in biomass. E-shaped model shows a common boundary, light and heat flow as well as import, export and storage of organic matter. Decomposers are placed in separate box to partially separate the grazing and detritus food chains. In Y-shaped model, one arm represents the grazing food chain and the other arm represents detritus food chain. The two arms differ fundamentally in such a way that they can influence primary producers. Universal model is applicable to any living component, whether a plant, animal, microorganism, or individual or population or a trophic group. It can depict the food chain as 19. Already shown in single and Y-shaped energy flow diagram or bioenergetics of an entire ecosystem. Every ecosystem provides large number of goods and services directly or indirectly to all animals including humans. These services provided by nature is free of cost, which includes food, fiber, fuels, soil formation, habitat protection, biomass production, production of atmospheric oxygen and soil formation, etc. Ecosystem has characteristics of self-maintenance and self-regulation. The regulation of functioning of ecosystem can be explained by two theories. The first theory, bottom-up control, states that nutrient supply to the primary producers controls ecosystem's function. The second theory, called top-down control, states that predation and grazing by higher trophic levels on lower trophic levels ultimately controls ecosystem function.